All righty. It is 7:29. I see no one else on the line, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. The meeting will be recorded tonight, and then it'll be broadcast on the Lunenburg Public Access channel sometime tomorrow. If anybody does join us, they are more than welcome to join in the discussion, and they can use the raise the hand feature to indicate that they have something that they'd like to talk about. We're going to cover the agenda, and maybe a few items that's not on the agenda will come up, but mostly we'll stick to the agenda. There is no members of the public joining us tonight, so we'll just go to minutes approval. William, had you sent out the meeting minutes? I haven't looked at my email account here recently.
I did not. I got tied up with work this week. I didn't get to send them out.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just get to them when you can, and hopefully we'll approve those at the meeting in January. Have you sent all the minutes that we have approved forward? I know there was one set that I was working on to send, and I did do that. But I think there were a couple of meeting minutes that you had to resurrect from your dead computer. So
Yeah, and I still haven't sent those off yet. They are all corrected, so
okay.
but I'll push
All
those
right.
out.
This is going to be a fairly quick meeting. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this by Zoom rather than, gathering us together at the Ritter. Richard and I made a presentation to the select board. And Richard, I thought it was kind of interesting hearing the comments from Tom Alonso. I didn't anticipate anything different from Michael Ray Jeffries. So what were your thoughts about the comments that we heard from the select board when we said, hey, we want to merge the two groups together?
Could you refresh my memory?
Well, we went to them and they said, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to merge the Historical Commission and the APDC? And I said, because I think that it would make the groups more efficient. It would make it possible to do some things town-wide that we can't currently do. And then your comments were something along the lines of, hey, we really have a hard time, getting members to join both of these organizations, and this way here we can pool our resources.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts, comments that you might have towards that? What Alonso said, what Tom Alonso said really surprised me. He goes, he says, we shouldn't be doing it just because we haven't got enough volunteers. And it's kind of like, that is the reality. I mean, people are busy today. And while you'd like to think that folks will show up and be good community volunteers, it's tough to do that with, people working, two income families. It's not like it was in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts, Richard?
I think that's one of the most important things, to be able to pool our resources and personnel and intelligence, because it is so hard has been hard for the Historical Commission to have meetings, as well as for people in the commission to have time to get any work done. If you don't have a full commission, we have 3 out of 5. You can't get much done with that. So it's hurting the commission, it's hurting the town, and it's hurting the commission's ability to be of service to the town with demolition delay and education and trying to preserve everything in town. The town's losing 1.5 historic properties every 2 years over the last 25 years. At that rate, there's not going to be much left in 100 years. So there's a lot of work to be done with education and organization and understanding of the historic resources in town. I think merging the APDC and the Historical Commission together would be of great benefit to both the APDC and the Historical Commission in their ability to service the town. and preserve the historic resources.
You know, I don't know whether you saw the email that Carter sent out. I think he sent it once again, Richard, to your, I'll have to go back and check, but I think that, you know, he sent out an email late, I think late Monday, late Tuesday, I don't know, one day, said, hey, Adam Costa is going to be in the office. Can I call you guys up and we can all sit down and talk about this merger? And he says, because I heard a few things at the select board meeting that were a little different than what I was thinking. And you know, so I told him I could not be available for an impromptu, spontaneous meeting at town hall. I said, call me, and you know, maybe we can just discuss it over the phone. And because I was having some work done here at the house and I couldn't leave yesterday. That was what he was where he was hoping to get us together. But I think that one of the biggest issues that we're going to have, I'm anxious to see what Adam Costa finds out about whether or not the APD bylaw went to the Attorney General and what comments there were received from the Attorney General's office. So I'm really anxious to see what his research shows up. But I think that based on the comments that I heard from Michael Ray Jeffries and from Tom Alonso, is that everybody's going to be really concerned about us requiring people that are in historic properties to have to come to us if you're outside of the APD. If we merge and we make the historical commission operate under our rules and go beyond just the architectural preservation district bylaw, I think we will have work to do in order to make that case at a town meeting.
It would be essentially, there's a difference, but it would be essentially the same thing. The way it is now, the Historical Commission has a 2-year demo delay bylaw behind them. So any historic property in town has to come to the Historic Commission and go through that process. So it would be similar than to having historic property in the APDC having to go to the APDC. The process between the two commissions is different, but essentially it serves the same purpose, to try to preserve that property in, if possible.
I don't know if Carter did speak with Adam yesterday. He never called me. I never got notified of either a phone call or a potential meeting. But I'll be following up with Carter because there's another item on the agenda that we'll talk about here in just a moment. William, do you have any questions about our discussions or comments?
Not at this time. I do find it surprising that the trouble in recruiting members was not a good reason for merger. You know, getting the right people that care and want to provide their time is given the best bang for the buck for the people of the town. So, yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised that was their response to it.
Yeah, I was blown away. It's kind of like, hey, you know, and you have too many. I've actually sent an email to Tom and Renee Emke when they created the budget task force, because my poor son got sucked into being the chair of that group. And I had cautioned him. I says, you got plenty of things on your plate. He's on school committee, you know, plus he's got a zillion things to do for work because he's his own boss. And I says, we got too many committees in this town. And yeah, so Tom was, no, we shouldn't, you know, we got plenty, we need these committees. And I was just like, hey, you know, you haven't got the people to man them. So if you haven't got people to man them, then you really can't get things done anyhow, you know.
Yeah, you have to make do. Did you pose a question concerning this topic on listserv to see if any other communities have had this merger?
No, what I wanted to do, I will do that eventually, Richard, but I wanted to get the legal feedback from Adam Costa before we reached out to a broader group. You know, I think that in particular, I want to know, you know, like he was apprehensive that we wouldn't be able to ever really use the power that we have you know, to disapprove an action, not just delay it, but to disapprove an action and say, that's the final decision. Now you got to take us to court if you want us to change it. He thought that that was a gigantic stretch. And he says, I'm not sure that that's going to stand a legal test. He says, that's one of the reasons why I want to look at what the Attorney General said when the bylaw went for review. So, you know, I think that once we have his input, we'll have a better understanding as to, you know, what questions we might ask of the people that are on the listserv. And I think that could be helpful. You know, there's always been a running comment about districts, historic districts, local historic districts, whether you can have just one structure in a historic district. You know, there's been a lot of that stuff on the listserv. And, you know, and it varies across the state of Massachusetts how people handle that. So we'll see what Adam says, and then we'll go out and we'll ask our questions too.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments about the first item under current business? If not, I'm gonna go to the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee activity. We had a meeting with Michael Ray Jeffries and Greg Roy to kind of look at where the storage is taking place, both at Town Hall and in the Ritter. And coincidentally, last Wednesday, the architect had come out to do kind of a walkthrough, since they now have the contract. You know, we have placed Taylor and Burns Architects under contract to come up with a 10% design concept and estimate for doing Town Hall as a meeting place and the Ritter building as renovated for the school committee. And then in addition, that would house the people that are currently in Town Hall, you know, the town manager, the assessors, the treasurer, town clerk, so on and so forth. So, well, it started out to be just basically Greg, Tony, and Michael Ray looking to see how storage is being handled in our two buildings of question. We actually intercepted the architect, and then the group of us, we all toured both Town Hall and Ritter. And I thought that it was a great experience for me. I got to see both of those buildings from basement to attic, and I had not done that before. And, you know, Michael Ray kept saying to me, he goes, oh, what do you think of this basement? You know, and the basement Town Hall it's fairly dry. It's got a bunch of crap in it that needs to be removed. You know, Michael or Richard, no one had the answer to this question. But do you know how Town Hall was heated prior to the forced air gas system that's been installed? Do you know?
I don't recall.
You know, they kept saying, oh, well, there was a boiler in here. But I found no boiler pipes remaining in Town Hall basement. And while they might have taken some of that stuff out when they went over to the gas forced air, I couldn't see any pieces of boiler piping. The other thing that I couldn't see was any penetrations from the attic up, or from the basement up into the first floor. You know, you can't see anything from the first floor to the second floor because of the drop ceilings and the false ceilings. So Michael Ray says, well, the only one I know might know the answer to this question who's immediately available would be Kathy Herrick. Well, she wasn't there that day, but he talked to her on the phone, and she said she thought it might have been, you ready for this? Fireplaces that kept the building warm before they put the gas forced air system in. Now, one of the things that I did see while I was in the basement, Richard, was one of the two chimneys. And, you know, I kind of looked in there, and it was like, you know, there was an opening where there obviously had been a pipe once before. And when I looked in there, it's like, that doesn't look that bad, you know. So that's a promising note for the Town Hall repair project.
When was the gas put in?
I'm gonna guess from what I saw in the way that current equipment in there looks like it's probably, you know, maybe 10 years old.
Yeah, I think there was I have vague memory that it was a big boiler in there, and I think there may have been vents in the floors for heat to go up through. And with the chimneys, there was, originally there was kerosene, I think kerosene heaters probably on, every floor
I
into,
tell you, you
into
know,
the chimneys.
it'll be interesting to see what Kathy actually does, what she does. You know, she says that she was going to do some checking to confirm that it was fireplaces. So we'll see how that turns out. The attic is a piece of work. I mean, I was just blown away with the craftsmanship in that building. And while certain people think that the building is, ready for imminent collapse, it's not. I mean, it is a stout, strong, structured building. Now, one of the things that really kind of surprised me, given all the conversations we've had in general about the meeting, turning the town hall into a meeting, versus what it's used for today, is that Michael Ray Jeffrey says, well, we're still going to use the second floor for the select board meeting. And you really can't do the kind of work that needs to be done on the interior of that building and keep all of the things that are there today. Like he says, oh, all we want to do here is just, we want to keep the control room on the second floor. We want to take out, the town manager's offices and the assistant town manager's offices, and then leave everything else in there. And Michael Ray split off. He had something else he had to do that day. And I asked the architect and the engineering group that they have as a subcontractor, and I says, I think that you're talking about gutting the building. I says, you'll never comply with code if you leave big chunks of the second floor select board area intact. I says, like, for example, there's an old fuse box that, that's behind a select board seating area. And the guy goes, yeah. He says, plus the fact, by the time we get done with putting sprinklers in here, he says, like there's that tin ceiling that's in there. He says, he says, that's gonna go. He says, there's like no way we could do all the work that we would need to do. So I said, here's my 2 cents. It says, keep the outside of the building intact, and on the inside, just strip it so you can do the work needed to update the building. And then maybe move the select board with some of the important architectural features from the second floor down to the first floor, and then put PAC on the second floor, or your meetings, on the second floor. It says, and then, you make it make the select board meetings far more accessible, because now people don't have to ride in that goofy little machine that they have to go from one floor to the next. And of course, a lot of people still walk up the stairs. So I wanted to kind of get, some feeling from you, Richard, and from you, William, about whether you think that's a decent approach to the renovation. I don't know how you could do it any other way. Like the 2 marble tablets that frame, the stage, those are priceless, so you would salvage those, you would bring those down. One of the things that the architect said, the engineer, he's like me, I'm an engineer. He goes, that's what you got to do. He said, you got to strip it, got it. He says, and then you can kind of rework or, reposition things after you've done that. Robert Taylor from Taylor and Burns, he says, that tin ceiling in there. He says, that's classic. And it is an architectural feature that you kind of want to preserve. I said, well, maybe you save portions of it. So that was where the conversation ended. Now we have a series of meetings for the municipal building design. We have another meeting this coming Monday night at 5:30. And I think there's going to be a couple of significant conversations that have to be had. One is, do you keep the select board up on the second floor? And then is there a way to bring the PAC into the town hall? One of the things about bringing PAC into town hall, they have $1 million in their bank account, which they could use towards the project. My biggest issue is I want to make sure that we have viable reasons for activity in town hall, so that no one says, just tear the thing down, don't spend any money. Okay, so that's my 2 cents. Richard?
I think it sounds good. I go into a lot of restored 19th and early 20th century theaters. And all the ceilings are preserved. And they've worked around them with the, or through them with the sprinklers and new lights and stuff, recessed lighting, in a very historic sensitive way to those ceilings. So not so sure that you would have to take out that ceiling. Seems like a lot of work, unnecessary work for nothing. I'm not up on the latest building code, so I'm not sure what that would say about it, but I do see, I don't see in all these theaters, I don't see any of the ceilings, and some of them are quite elaborate, that have been taken down and plastered over.
That's a good point, Richard.
Mhm.
William?
You know, going through this with other facilities, I mean, the architect is going to, you know, strip it down to whatever they can save on the historical side, you know, and then pretty much gut in a way and reconfigure however best fits. Um, Sometimes it takes putting that on paper for it to make sense. Um, but I mean, I think they could definitely restructure that facility to be definitely more user friendly. Um,
Mhm.
I'm not sure how big the pack is to squeeze them in there. I'm not too sure on their size, but I definitely think it's doable and still keeping a lot of the historical piece components to the facility.
Okay.
Also, those memorial slabs from the Civil War are priceless. You'd have to have a monument company that knows how to handle such things to move those. If the architect could work around those and leave them in place and have his design that incorporates those, it would save a lot of money and yeah, it would be it's going to be hazardous to move those, even with people that know how to do it, because they're heavy, very heavy, and they have to be dismantled and then remantled. So the opportunity for a break or damage to them in the process is present.
I think working around those things would be the ideal, but I think that's going to be a challenge. I really do. I mean, I think that
Mm.
that's going to be the issues. Can you get all the code stuff done and keep a big chunk of what's there, still in place?
Mhm.
Speaking of heavy, uh, in my trip to the attic, that's where T-Mobile has their cellular system equipment up in the attic. Have you seen that, Richard?
I haven't been up there, but I'm aware of it.
Well, you got to climb these narrow, rickety, not rickety. They're not rickety. They're narrow, and the tread's even narrow. And you got to make a turn to get up to the attic. Steps are stout, but they're clearly not up to code. And they're going to bring, are you ready for this? They're going to bring a 2,000-pound battery to replace the battery that they have up there. And the Taylor and Burns architect, Robert Taylor, he goes, does your fire department know that they're going to put a 2,000-pound lithium battery up here? And Chris Ruth, who was with us, he says, I don't know. And he says, but we got this agreement. It says we can't do anything with T-Mobile. They're completely in charge of that space. And I says, well, if there's like a life safety issue or a code issue with regards to fire protection, I says that
Mhm.
might be something that the agreement would trump the agreement with T-Mobile.
It
And
would supersede it.
yeah, I think they're talking about doing. I have no. The only way I can think they're going to bring a 2,000 battery up on that into that attic on those stairs is in pieces. I mean, it is just. Let me think
Mm.
about that. It's a 1-ton
I would
piece.
assume they would have brought it with a crane and gone in through the outside.
Well, that's kind of how you would normally handle something like that, but there's no space or no openings up there for something like that, William. I don't know how they got the equipment in there, that's being used. So, but
Well, being
that's
a
an
with it being a lithium battery, they might run into code issues as far as fire suppression. Because I think anything where you house batteries that have that high burn rate, like
mhm,
lithium, there
yeah.
has to be a fire suppression system. So that might be an issue.
Well, clearly, we're gonna have a fire suppression system if this project moves forward. But they moved that battery in there, there's no fire suppression system in there, unless they would bring, the bottle type, the can. But I don't know how effective that is against lithium fires. I mean, you keep hearing about
That wouldn't
how,
last long enough.
yeah, you keep hearing about how difficult it is to put a Tesla battery out when they catch on fire.
Hmm.
Okay, so the Ritter Building, it's a great facility. Richard, have you ever been in the attic of the Ritter
No, I
Building?
haven't. No.
There is something really strange up there in the Ritter Building in the attic, and someday maybe when we have a chance, I want to get your take on it. And William, same for you. But there's this gigantic galvanized square tub, so to speak, and it's surrounded by sawdust. And it's in the attic, and it's like, what was that used for? Like my first thought was, well, maybe they put ice in there so that they would have cool drinking water in the library.
It's galvanized,
Yeah,
so it's modern.
yeah.
It's not old.
It's the weirdest thing.
Hmm.
But the building is in great shape, except for the windows. And I made my case for, once again, you know, saving the windows and making sure that we fix the things that really need to be fixed.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm gonna deviate just slightly with this conversation and knock off one of the old business items at the same time. So, William, Richard knows about this. I've had a conversation with him. They opened the bids for town hall, and that's going to move forward. Submittals have been sent by the contractor, and the chimneys are going to be repaired. They're going to start working on those first. And Richard, I asked if you could inspect the chimneys.
Mhm.
And Brian Gingras said, I don't think you'll be able to get up on the roof because of liability issues. So if you want to look at it, you're going to have to deal with Brian and Chris in order to get up on the roof.
Yeah.
I do think that's a bit of an issue. I can understand that. The only way
Yeah.
I could see that not, being something you could work through is to say you are a municipal employee, and we are covered by the town's liability policy.
Mhm.
And if does that cover things like physical issues, not just whether we say something stupid and someone wants to sue the town because we said something stupid. So that
Mhm.
might be one of the ways to deal with that, to say, by Massachusetts law, the three of us, are classified as municipal employees so that we can be protected by the town's liability issue. So that project's going to move forward. One of the things that one little slight change, William, and Richard knows about this. I was called by Chris, and they said, "Hey, the specs called for 3-tab shingles, and that's what you all looked at when you approved the CTA. Is it okay if we use architectural shingles?" And I think that's a deal. I mean, first of all, the shingles that are up there now, they're not historic, and for us to put architectural shingles on there is a deal for the town. They cost more, they last longer, they look better. So this project is going to have the building's going to have architectural shingles on it when it's finished, which I think will actually, be a nice add to the look of town hall versus putting back on the town hall 3-tab shingles, which are going to need to be replaced in 15 years. So,
This is I think this is this will be the second roof that's been put on there since 2000, if not later. So there was the roof that's on there now was put on there between 2000 and 2010, I believe.
That doesn't surprise me. 3-tab shingles don't last more than about 15 years, and
No,
especially
it's a waste of money.
it
It's
is.
just, it's a scam. The cost goes up a lot every time you go to put the next one on. And you're just throwing away money.
Yeah.
It's convenient at the time because you don't have to spend a lot of money, but that's just for the moment.
Like so many things in life.
It's a throwaway roof.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Ritter. Ritter's more complex. So there were two major projects where appropriations were put against the Ritter building. One was for handicap ramp, and the other was for exterior repairs and windows. So when they rebid the project, or when they bid the project, they hadn't rebid it. They had to rebid Town Hall, but when they put Ritter out, Carter Terrazzini made a decision to scrap going out for the handicap ramp, especially since we're now looking at perhaps doing a project for that would deliver an elevator to the Ritter complex. The exterior repairs and the windows were split into two separate bid packages. One was roughly 100,000 and change, and the other was $430,000. So the exterior repairs, which includes some shingle replacement, the slate roof, a lot of work on the gutters, and painting, was the low bid was 100,000. And then the windows came in at $430,000. So at the select board meeting, after we talked about the merger, I put my 2 cents worth and said, hey, you guys can't wait on doing these exterior repairs. You could wait on the windows because the windows didn't necessarily need to be replaced. So I had a conversation with Carter after the select board meeting. I talked to him about this, and I says, Carter, I says, you can't wait for the addition project to move forward and just let the shingles and the roofing materials and the gutters just fall apart. And they are. I mean, the damage being done because of no maintenance, I says, is just awful. And Carter's concerned at the low bidder at 100,000. There were 3 bids. One was 100, the other one was 200, and the third was 300. And Carter was concerned, so he called the contractor in. It was at the $100,000, and I don't know what the outcome is. They were to meet yesterday, and he says if he says he can't do it for 100,000, I'm going to let him go. He says, but then we haven't got enough money to do the exterior repairs, and I'm going to recommend it just go back to town meeting in May, which I think is a mistake. And I said, you can't wait that long. I says, plus the fact that it might get disapproved at town meeting. He says, well, he says, I says, use the money that was in the window replacement, bring that over, or go find some money. So he's going to make a presentation to the select board on what his final decision is with regards to the exterior repairs. The windows, he basically told the select board, can't afford the windows, not going to happen. So I did say to him, I'd like to be at the select board when you make that recommendation. And he says that he thinks he'll do that next Tuesday. So if you want to join me and I'm going to go in person, but if you want to join by Zoom, feel free to do so. But I just want to make sure that they realize that there's things happening in that building right now that needed to get fixed 2 years ago when we first started talking about this building. And the longer they wait, the much more expensive, and the damage being done is going to cost a fortune to repair. So that's the latest on the 2 projects. Moving forward on Town Hall, Ritter not moving, and that needs to get fixed. I think Ritter is in worse shape than Town Hall is. So, any questions?
If you observe any building over time, there's a snowball effect to not maintaining it. I mean, it's like with anything, if you don't maintain your body, there's a snowball effect. It's a little thing at first, but if you ignore it, it gets bigger and bigger and faster and faster. On a masonry building, you'll see a little crack. And if that's neglected, you'll see it getting bigger, and then you'll see it getting bigger, and then the brickwork deteriorating faster and faster, which increases the cost rapidly. So the longer something waits to be maintained, the more it costs, and that cost increases rapidly the longer you wait. And that building's been neglected, and it's the deterioration in the chimney and the brickwork has increased over that time. 100,000 sounds like it's too small a number to do the work on that building. And the town needs to be sure that they have somebody of quality doing it rather than getting stuck with somebody that's not qualified or underbid just to get the job, or doesn't know how to bid and bid too low and then has to come back to the town after for more money.
I agree. So we'll find out. I'm gonna try and get a hold of, I'm gonna text Carter, see if he made a decision about whether he's gonna ditch the low bidder or not. And like he said, he told me, he says, I'll let you know when this goes back to the select board, so you can come and make a presentation if you want to. So, okay. Any other questions about the two projects? I'm gonna jump back up to the Brooks House. So when we met last, I says, hey, now that we got the article passed, I'm gonna go back to Carter and say, hey, what role do you want us to play? And I did that, and guess what happened? He goes, well, he says, my plan was to pull together a team, get all the interested parties that I thought would have a play in this, the school committee, my staff, the land use director. He says, but it came up at the select board meeting, and Michael Ray Jeffries said, oh, he wants to put the Brooks House underneath the Lunenburg Municipal Design Committee umbrella and deal with it. And I says, oh man, I says, that's the last thing that I want to see happen. I says, because the Lunenburg Municipal Building Design Committee, it pretty much has a full plate, from now through town meeting. And that was the deadline that we had asked, that's what the warrant says, that the select board will be prepared to make a recommendation by that period of time. And I already know what the agenda is going to be for next Monday's meeting, and it's not on the agenda. And I'm pretty sure it's not going to be on the agenda in January and February, because those are going to be conversations with the architect about the two projects, Ritter and Town Hall. And I think we're going to consume every bit of time that we have. So I'm going to talk to Michael Ray Jeffries and say, hey, in fact, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it up at the meeting Monday night and then say, what do you all think? Like toss it out to the committee and get the committee to say, we won't have time to do this. We got plenty of stuff on our plate right now with these other two projects, and get it thrown back to Carter so that he can, pull together the right people and come up with the plan for the Brooks House. So a twist and a turn that I wasn't anticipating, and that's not good for the Brooks House. Comments?
Yeah, it's interesting that they would just try and throw it in there when that committee's already been running. Yeah. Be able to be handled offline. I don't think that one really needs a huge committee to work through.
And I think that's what Carter was thinking too, Richard?
No comment.
Okay. All right. So those were the meaty pieces for our conversation tonight. A lot going on here, and we got to keep our eye on the merger. We got to keep our eye on the Brooks House and the Ritter building. So we'll see how those turn out. Richard, do you have any input on 763 Mass Avenue? Anything going on there?
Haven't heard a whisper about it.
Okay. And I drive by 50 Main Street and don't see anything taking place at the old church.
Again, that's a National Register historic property in a national historic district that's been going demolition by neglect for quite a few years. It was probably 20 years ago that steeple was in mint condition. It was a little worn for paint and such, but all the pieces were intact. And as we spoke earlier, there was starting to be a little bit of deterioration, and then the snowball effect.
Yeah.
So it's heading for demolition through unnecessary neglect. The owners have done nothing about it at all, and there are government grants that come out periodically that are available for restoration of such properties. But I think it's in the homeowners, the building owners court that they need to do something about it. They need to look into the grants and finding out what they need to repair that. It's eventually, and I don't think it'll be too long before it comes before our commission to be demolished. The steeple, that is, not the whole building, but and that steeple in that church is an important part of Lunenburg history. A lot of the community attended that church before it merged with the Congregational Church in the center of town.
I'm gonna reach out. Nathan he's out of town tonight. That's the reason why he didn't join us, and he said he had meetings. He's at a conference. I think I'm gonna reach out to him and say, have you had any response? Have you made any contact? And if he hasn't, then I'm gonna draft a letter that we'll review in January to send to the property owner and say, here's our concerns, and, you need to come back with kind of a plan of action. So we've been talking about this way too long, and the longer it goes, the worse it's going to get, which is kind of crazy because, like, he obviously, there's an office condominium association there. I mean, it's insane for them to let things just, go the way they're going. It's going to cost them far more money than if they would deal with it, quickly.
Yes, even in demolition. There's a lot of companies that just take every single penny they can out of a business and milk it forever it's worth, and then everything collapses as far as the property.
Yeah.
It was before it was in the APDC. The Historical Commission had that on their agendas for a good 10 years.
Okay. We haven't done the property owner notification. I'm still, of the mindset that we should do that. But with the discussion about the merger, maybe that's something that we do, and maybe that's something we don't. I want to get Adam Costa's input back on the potential merger, and then we'll make a final decision on how we're going to handle the notification of people who are in the APD. And then that would include, kind of the brochure that we've been discussing. That's all I have. We have had someone join us. And we're at the point of the agenda that says closing public comment. Is there any public comment from the individual who joined us most recently? You're on mute, in case you didn't realize that. If not, I've posted a potential date of 9 January 2025 for our next meeting. Any problems with making that?
No.
Okay. All right, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, everybody have a great Christmas holiday, and I'll, if I hear anything new from Carter about the Ritter project or the Ritter Town Hall projects, I'll send you out an email. We obviously no discussions, but just FYI. So, and
Okay.
with that, we'll see you in January.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Happy holidays, guys. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye.